If I asked you if you had integrity in your relationship, what would you say? Today in the podcast, we're going to explore exactly how to answer that question. This is the Strength of Seduction podcast, the #1 resource for Black couples who want to build intimacy, love, and connection in their relationship. I'm your host, Daniel DiPiazza. Welcome back to the Strength of Seduction podcast, the #1 resource for Black couples who want to build intimacy, love, and connection in their marriage. I'm your host, Daniel DiPiazza, and if you're new here and you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe or to hit the bell for updates if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform like Apple or Spotify. Make sure to subscribe and leave a review, please, for the love of God. We have an incredible episode for you today on the value of integrity in your relationship and how you can create more of it. But before we dive in, we have a special offer for you. Strength of Seduction is opening up free 30-minute coaching sessions to any podcast listener who wants to build more health, wealth, and intimacy in their relationship. And on this call, we're going to take you through the Relationship Health Booster. This is a 30-minute session designed to help you uncover the strengths and find the biggest opportunities for growth in your marriage. And you can get a free 30-minute coaching session right now. Just go to strengthofseduction.com/coaching. The link is also going to be in the show notes. I highly recommend it. Everyone who has tried this so far has really loved it because what it does is it shows you through just 20 questions how far or how close you are in alignment with your partner, if you guys are seeing things the same way. And it takes you through 20 questions, I think 4 or 5 different areas of expertise, of specialty, based on, we did 17,000 people through our survey. And so we know what really makes marriages last, what makes great marriages or good marriages great, and what really makes things work. And so you can take this assessment. You just go to strengthofseduction.com/coaching, and the link is again in the show notes. Now, on to today's episode. I want to thank everyone again who came out to last week's Mastering Sex in Your Marriage event with Maisha Battle. If you were a part of that, you know kind of what went down there. It's that we had so many people show up that it kind of crashed our live stream, essentially, and we had to upgrade our software because we're doing it again because so many people wanted to see it, so many people couldn't get in. And so if you're listening to this now, January 31st, which is a Wednesday, we're doing it again at 7 p.m. Eastern, Mastering Sex in Your Marriage, round 2 with Maisha Battle. This is your opportunity to hear from a real licensed clinical sexologist and sex educator about what it takes to really improve the intimate aspect of your relationship, how to both get in sync sexually, how to find each other in the mood, how to create time for those intimate experiences, when everything else is so busy, and for just in terms of your confidence, how to relieve some of the anxiety you might have around having to perform a certain way, or how to ask your partner what they want and how to express your needs. These are all things that we don't really talk about enough, that are really important, and that just need to be discussed. It's like I said, it's kind of like adult sex ed. That's how I think about it. And you can sign up for free if you haven't already, or if you were locked out of the first one because we were just so overwhelmed with people who want to watch it. You can go to Strength of Seduction private community and RSVP for this. And if you're not already on that list, you can go to strengthofseduction.com/training to get on the list. So if you're already in the community, go ahead and RSVP. And if you're not, if you haven't even gotten your first ticket for this thing, go to strengthofseduction.com/training. You'll get in there. I'll also put that note there, or that link in the show notes. And yeah, that's it, guys. I hope that you come out and enjoy the free opportunity to learn from an expert who really knows what she's talking about. And let's talk about today's conversation. We're talking about the value of integrity in your relationship. And this is the second of 9 of the core relationship values that you can learn about inside of the Strength of Seduction book. And, the book is so cool because what it is it's a guidebook for you and your partner to build a healthier physical, spiritual, and emotional connection. And it's a really interesting, basically, collection of tools and ideas to help you create these positive values in your relationship. So we talked about trust before. Now we're talking about integrity. And I think it's really important to talk about the definition of what even is integrity in a romantic relationship. And there's integrity, in my opinion, this is, my definition, it expands beyond just one trait, and it really encompasses a few different things. I think it encompasses just beyond just being honest. I think it also involves being consistent. So if you have integrity, you're kind of like you're being consistent with your values. I would say if you're being integrous, you also have a moral or ethical component to your character. If you have integrous behavior, if you're integrous, I think there's also like a congruence in your words and your actions. We kind of talked about this with honesty. but consistent word and actions. Those are all elements of integrity, which I think just kind of deepens the character. It's not just being honest. It's also behaving in a certain way and holding yourself in a certain way. And I think that it's the value. I think integrity is one of those things that fosters and creates more trust. When someone sees the integrity in others, it creates more natural trust. And so I think that's an important characteristic. Now, when it comes to integrity in your relationship, I think that there are a few different components that can build that integrity and that feeling of stability and solidity into your relationship. And the first is just honesty. So being truthful in all aspects of the relationship. I just think that, there's just the longer that you go in a relationship, the less room there is for secret keeping, because it essentially takes energy to hold in a secret. It takes energy to hold on to a mistruth, and it always is like running in the background if it's not resolved. And that alone on your own mental energy is a drain and a strain. Some people can deal with it and they can just live the whole life with tons of secrets. Me personally can't do it. It's too hard. So I think that that's the first pillar of integrity in the relationship. The next one is just consistency. So just showing up over and over again, being consistent, showing up over and over again. And that, I think, is the value of a long-term relationship. You can see how someone performs over a longer period of time. It's easy to show up for the first few months or the first year, or maybe, a couple of years of a relationship. But when you get into over a decade, a few decades, that you really start to see how someone shows up. And then you start to understand their character more, and if they're a consistent character or not. And that's an important part of integrity, I believe. Another one is accountability. I think that a lot of people struggle, with being accountable to how their actions affect their partner. And it's not always like something catastrophic, but just taking accountability for how the things that you do will affect, how your partner might do, or, how they might feel. I know for me, it's something that has just been a continuous learning experience of like, oh yeah, be considerate. Oh yeah, inform someone when you make a decision. Oh yeah, ask someone if it's something that's going to affect them jointly. Just, those types of things where you're just not thinking of other people, and then you're having to say, oh wait, my bad. Like, oh yeah, I didn't mean to do that. Or yeah, I did fuck that up, or I did make that mistake, or I did, and so I think that just builds integrity into the relationship over time. It's like, if you do fuck up, owning it, it really helps to restore integrity quickly, even if there was a big fuck up. I think that's an important part. Being integrous doesn't mean never making a mistake. I think it means more owning up to it than anything. Obviously, like, you don't want to violate trust, and you don't want to violate, like, those things are not integrous in and of themselves, but a way to restore trust is to own up to it. And then also just, within that, showing respect to the partner's feelings, understanding their boundaries, trying to understand things from their perspective, trying to understand how they might see things is part of, I think, respecting them. So yeah, it's just an important part of building integrity into the relationship. Geez, so much coffee, so little tongue. So let's talk about it. Like, in terms of building integrity into the relationship and navigating the challenges within it, I think that there are a few common scenarios that test integrity. So one is financial hardship. And I didn't have, growing up, I grew up in a single parent household. Now that I'm married and we've been together for over 14 years, I've had to learn how to just have financial integrity. I didn't have a problem with it before, but I think just learning how to communicate about money is such a challenge. I've seen in our community, people have actively talked about the fact that they have a hard time communicating about finances with their partner. And this is something that I can understand, because finances are scary. They're unpredictable for some people, or they're attached to a lot of serious pain, a lot of feelings of lack, discomfort, shame, just fear all around. And I think that it's scary. It's a pretty intimate part of your life. There's also like some scarcity and resource hoarding, or like people are coming with bad credit scores and don't want to own up to it, all these different things. And I think that just transparency is so important in financial stuff. We didn't even get premarital counseling or any type of prep for what to expect during marriage. And so we had to unpack it slowly as we went along and to learn and adjust. But I think one of the most important things you can do is just having regular weekly updates on what's going on in your accounts, and like deciding how you want to do finances. Some people do all joint accounts. Some people do a combination of joint and shared accounts. Some people let one person mostly lead, but the others, but there's consideration for both people's needs and feelings. So within the financial realm, there is a lot of learning to do in terms of how to communicate. But if you can learn to communicate, you can build financial integrity. So getting back to the integrity part here, and because that is an area where people often fall short, and people have difficulties and financial hardships. Other areas of challenges in integrity that can be thought about and overcome is differences in parenting style. So just depending on how you were raised, if you were raised in a very strict parenting style versus a very loose parenting style, a more direct parenting style versus a more passive aggressive parenting style, a more, an abusive parenting style, an absent parenting style. There are all these different ways that we're raised. And I think probably that in every childhood experience, there's either a positive example of something that was done well, or there's an anti-example which can be taken from that. So it's either like, I want to do this like my parents did for me, or my parents did this wrong or didn't do this for me, so I'm going to do the opposite or a different route for my children. I think there's, no matter what the childhood experience was, there's going to be the positive or negative from that, and you can take something from that. But if you have a different parenting style to your spouse, it can be really challenging because you see the world a different way, you're raised a different way, you have different triggers to different types of responses. And and so I think that that's something that is going to could require counseling over. It could require just a conversation over. It could require just learning more about each other's past, because sometimes we don't understand why our partner is acting a certain way until we ask them and learn more about them. And hopefully, if you've been in the relationship for a while, you will have learned some of that stuff. But you'd be surprised how many people have been in a relationship for a while and don't really fully, truly understand the extent to which they're dealing with essentially just the echoes in the feedback loop of a childhood experience or that person's parents' experiences. Like, really generational experience, generational trauma is a real thing, and I almost try not to overuse that because I think it can become cliche sometimes, and people can get too obsessed with it, but it is a thing. If there's a cycle of trauma, it does get passed down and you will experience it. You will feel that. And so just recognizing that and being able to identify that in how you parent is an important part of learning to grow and improve as parents and as individuals. And then you can make conscious decisions rather than just blindly doing what your parents did. And then if you can have conversations about that with your spouse, then you guys can both be on the same page about, oh, okay, how do we want to come together and parent our kids? And what have we learned from our own experiences that we want to, change? And so, I think communication is a big part of that. And also in terms of integrity, I mean, obviously it's like external romantic temptations is a big part of remaining integrous. I think that's the big one, and everyone knows that. And it's just, I think that if you're tempted outside, it just means that you're not communicating inside. And the longer you go without communicating inside, the more tempting outside gets. But ultimately, it's like, that's literally pointing to the problem. If you're looking outside, it's pointing to the problem of, oh, it's inside. A lot of times we look to solve internal problems with external means. So that's something to really note. Like, let's say you were at one point in love with your partner, but you're feeling tempted outside, then you need to ask yourself why. If you still are in love, but you're not getting your needs met, then there's a conversation to be had. If you're not in love, then there should be broken up. There should be a divorce. And I don't even really condone divorce necessarily in terms of, I think you should stick it out and work it out. But if you truly don't want to be together, then it's kind of pointless to just carry on weird affairs. And honestly, I don't think any child has ever said, I thank my parents for staying together for my sake, even though they hate each other's guts, cheated on each other, and made the household living hell. Literally, no child has ever been grateful for that. The parents always say they want to stay together for the kids, but no kid has ever said they appreciate that. So just get a divorce and just say, it's not good for me anymore. I'd like to go my separate way. Thank you. And, I always sad of hearing a divorce that ends poorly, because I always think like, if you got married to somebody, you would have did that hopefully because you love them. Like, I think the majority of people get married because they love that person nowadays. And so you would think that throughout those years potentially that you were together, there'd be a lot of really good experiences, and those would be the primary things you remember. But so often in divorce and in, these breakups, all you can talk about is all the bad things that person did, all the bad, experiences you had towards the end, or whatever the catastrophic thing is that blew the relationship up. That's the thing. I would just hope that there would be other experiences that would be also, really good things to remember. And there could be some sort of like positive resolution to most divorces, which ultimately come down to communication, I believe. I talk about this with my wife all the time. And honestly, like, I don't think that we're special. I don't think that we're different. I think that, we've had multiple different opportunities to exit, to leave, to, take a break, to all these different ways, all these different reasons to quit. And I think a lot of relationships have, and we just have decided that we didn't want to do that. And we want to work through it. And it's been, this year will be 14 years. I'm very grateful for that. Very much love her, and, and all that's great. But like, it's not easy, and I think that like, there's always going to be things come up, and it gets easier over time too, when you like have passed some of the whatever the worst challenges were in your particular relationship, if you can get over that. But most of it comes down to talking it through, communication. Like, ultimately, when you're going to therapy, that's what they're facilitating you talking it through. That's ultimately what they're doing, giving you different perspectives or allowing the person to be heard, allowing each other to be heard. Because a lot of times in private scenarios, if we're not emotionally mature enough to listen to people and then to communicate then effectively, we're not actually having a conversation. We're having a dual monologue where we're just both talking and we're not listening. And I think that that's a valuable skill. But if you can learn those skills, I don't really think ultimately you need therapy, because that would solve so many of the problems before they became issues that needed therapy, and they would solve any problems that therapy would have required. It's just literally listening to each other. But of course, I'm not a doctor. Speak to your doctor, listen to your doctor, all that type of stuff. But ultimately, I think that a lot of people would agree with that. And ultimately, when it comes to integrity, it's much easier to stay in integrity than it is to try to regain integrity, So that's another thing too. It's one of the analogies I'll make is like, I'm a martial artist, and a lot of times we'll ask our coach, well, how do we escape this bad position? And he'll say, well, just don't get into that position. In martial arts, they'll talk to your coach and you'll say, well, coach, how do I avoid, or how do I get out of this really difficult or challenging situation? And he'll look at you and he'll say, just don't get into that situation in the first place. It's the same thing with some of the most challenging situations in our relationships. Well, listen, sir or ma'am, how do you avoid those things? You just don't get into those situations in the first place. And I think that, there's like, if you're the type of person who has difficulty controlling, quote unquote, controlling yourself, then that's a personal thing that you got to work on. That's a personal problem. But in general, also not putting yourself in situations where you can run into problems that will either cause like infidelity or like, I don't know if it's for you, if it's like drinking or gambling or whatever the thing is, just keep yourself out of those situations. I mean, even when it comes to, I don't really go to clubs like that or any type of like nightclub. I will probably go like once every 2 years, once every 3 years. And my wife does sometimes like to go and we'll dance. But I just think like in general, the energy of clubs, the energy of bars, the energy of, a lot of these public places is not conducive to like a peaceful, harmonious experience. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a club. It's a club. But you put yourself in a position to run into problems. I mean, I can think of multiple situations for me in nightclubs or in these public settings with alcohol involved where it introduces problems. It introduces the potential for bad things to happen. And so I think that it's just really the real martial artist is the one who avoids the problem before it arises, is the one who escapes without taking a hit. I think it's the same with integrity. The real move is to not even have to test the integrity because you're already away from the problem areas. And if obviously if you are tested, doing the right thing. But yeah, so that's my thought on integrity. I think that in a marriage, I think that just like in a business, you create a culture, and the culture is just how people act over time and what is expected just implicitly. And it's like a way people behave, and it's setting a tone. And I think that you can have a culture of integrity. And I think you can create that culture of mutual respect and that culture of deeper emotional connection, the culture of, resilience against external stressors, you versus the world, you and your partner versus the world. I think you can create a culture of all that, and it comes to integrity. So yeah, check it out. This is all part of the Strength of Seduction book. It is free to our community members. It will also be back on Amazon in print soon. You can check it out, Strength of Seduction book. And if you would like to check out our next upcoming live event, depending on when you're listening to this, you can go to strengthofseduction.com/training. And right now, our next one is our live training with Maisha Battle, who is a certified clinical sexologist and who's going to teach us all about how to just improve our lives in the bedroom, and improve our sexual relationship within our marriage. And so it's a pretty awesome opportunity to learn from one of the best. And so check that out if you haven't RSVP'd already. That's in the community as well. And what else? Let's see. Free coaching, guys. We have a relationship health booster. So this is a 30-minute coaching session for you and your partner. It will take you through 20 proven questions to show you where you are in your relationship and where your areas for improving and strengthening your bond are. So you can go to strengthofseduction.com/coaching to book your free relationship coaching session. And that's it for today, guys. That's it for the podcast today. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on, and leave a review on Apple or Spotify. As I always say, love fiercely, communicate openly, and always find your way back to each other. Daniel, out.